Good morning, everybody. I'm Coco Alcuas, Executive Director here at Makati Business Club. Thank you very much for joining us today. Welcome to the second session of our Face-to-Face with CABSEC series. This series is in partnership with our generous sponsors, ACCIONA, SM Investments, and SteelAsia. Thank you as well to our media partners, ANC and Businessworld. Again, thank you to all of you who attended here at the Shangri-La, and thank you as well to those who are joining us by Zoom. And if I could invite them, any one of them who's willing to turn on their videos and to wave to the people here on the screen. Ambassador Stephen Robinson is there again. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us. Attorney Romulo, other names as well. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. We also have viewers on FB Live, and welcome to them. For those of you who are here in the audience, if you have questions later, my colleagues Bianca Malonzo over there and Cacho Afilado over here will come to you with microphones. We do really encourage you to ask questions. I'll explain later that we've done away with the remarks by the keynote speaker and really jump to questions so that we can get a real conversation going here. We had something like that with the first session with Secretary Diokno. We hope we have it again with you. So each table has a quota of at least two questioners. So you can begin to pick that already by now. For those of you who are watching on Zoom, please write your questions as early as now, and my colleague Adrian Asoy will be taking those and reading them out to us later on. In this second session of our CABSEC series, we're pleased to be joined by NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan. Secretary Balisacan will discuss how accelerating infra and other job-creating investments will be crucial in transforming the Philippines into a more competitive economy in the region. As I said, the format for this session is similar to the last one, but very different from the previous ones. No more speech from Secretary Balisacan. I think he's probably tired of giving that speech anyway, and I think many of us have been watching him, so we know what's the content there. But we'll go straight to Q&A after that. Okay. Please tell me if I'm getting something wrong, Bianca. The next step is what? Sorry, you're right. So I'd like to acknowledge our board members who are here today, our chairman, Ed Chua, our vice chairman, Jaime Augusto Sobel de Ayala, our former chairman, Ramon del Rosario, and our board member, Lito Tayag. Cosette is not here yet, or not here. Also, I'd like to introduce the chair of our diversity committee, Eileen Yao of IBM. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Ambassador Ilan Flus of Israel and the charge at the New Zealand Embassy, Tim Gibbons. Before I introduce, Bianca, tell me if I'm wrong, okay? Before I introduce, I call on our chairman for the welcome and introductory remarks. Allow us to take two photos. First of the head table while they're still complete. And then a photo of all of us. So please get ready with your smiles. Okay. Maynard. So everybody, please flash a smile, wave for posterity. Could I ask you to wave? There you go. Thanks very much. With that, allow me to call on our chairman, Ed Chua, for the welcome and introductory remarks.
Thank you, Coco, and good morning to everyone. Welcome to the second installment of the Face-to-Face with CABSEC. This is part of MBC's constant effort to strengthen public-private dialogue and collaboration. With the Marcos administration, this effort actually started by meeting his key appointees soon after the election. And our first meeting was with Secretary Balisacan on June 8, 2022. The president had not even been inaugurated by then. We again met with Secretary Balisacan on December 22, 2022, to present MBC's economic and infra action plans. In that and all our meetings, we start by asking how the private sector can help the government. As many of you know, this is Secretary Balisacan's second round at NEDA. He was NEDA Secretary of President Benigno Aquino II. You may also not know that he is a long-time marathon runner. And according to a marathon runner and on our board, he is also a fast runner with speed and stamina. Not many of us will compete with him on the track, but we better be ready to keep up with him in policy in the next 6 years. He has demonstrated speed with his quick reversal of the Duterte government's last-minute revisions to the Build, Operate, Transfer rules. He did this by September, less than 3 months after taking office. His revisions restored the attractiveness of PPPs. I know everyone in this room, thank you for your quick action on that, Secretary. Thank you very much. But a marathon runner also has perseverance. He has come a long way from his roots in Ilocos Norte, where his father was a tenant farmer and a janitor, among other jobs. Probably inspired by his experience, he achieved agriculture and economic degrees from the Mariano Marcos State University, then UP Los Baños, then the University of Hawaii. His first government job was as an undersecretary in the Department of Agriculture, where he served as our chief negotiator in the World Trade Organization agriculture negotiations. His next job was NEDA Secretary of President Noynoy Aquino. Among his many accomplishments then was Ambisyon 2040, a survey-based long-term agenda for an inclusive and prosperous Philippines. It remained a touchpoint for the Duterte administration, and no doubt for the new Marcos administration with its main author back at NEDA. Before President Aquino stepped down, he named Secretary Balisacan the first head of the brand new Philippine Competition Commission. After 5 years there, he's even more steeped in what it takes to make a competitive economy. He presided over mergers and acquisition applications, such as Grab's acquisition of Uber, Universal Robina's purchase of Rojas Holdings sugar operations, and Union Bank's acquisition of Citi Philippines consumer banking assets. Back at NEDA and on the heels of revising the BOT rules, he got the 2023-2028 Philippine Development Plan out by Christmas. There's that speed again by Secretary Balisacan. The plan targets economic and social transformation because, as the Secretary says, we're improving, but our neighbors are improving faster. That's the reason for our theme today. Is it finally our turn? We're looking forward to a convincingly positive response from you, Mr. Secretary. And I will now turn over to Coco, who will lead the interview and open discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Secretary, could I invite you to join us? Not at all. Secretary Balisacan is saying sorry because he's actually in the building for 2 hours before this, but somehow got stuck. What held you up, Secretary? Okay. Again, if there are any questions, my colleagues are going from table to table. I think they're already asking you. If you have questions, we'd really appreciate that. Again, each table has a quota. Otherwise, no lunch will be served to that table. Those on Zoom, Adrian is your man, and please type that in already. I see you all laughing and smiling. I don't see anyone raising their hands. So I'm going to ask the first couple of questions. Secretary, I think a very easy question is inflation. And just 1 or 2 days ago, you said by March it will peak. Frankly, the government officials have been saying it's going to peak next month. It's going to peak next month since October, November last year. So it's supposed to be December. Secretary Diokno was with us some weeks ago, and he said then the upcoming announcement a few days later would show that it had come down again. And here we are again. Why is this not going away? When is it going to go? You've said it will go away by March, but why has it taken so long to go away?
Just to be honest, I also am was also quite surprised by the January number.
You know, if he's surprised, then where does it leave us? No?
I think that we underestimated the impact of the disruptions, domestic disruptions, especially in agriculture. As many of you know, we have our agricultural sector is suffering from many adverse developments there. Like you have the animal disease that hit hardly our livestock sector as well as our chicken industry. And then we have all these typhoons that hit many of the vegetable growing areas of the country, and all these high prices of inputs that prevented farmers from recovering their damaged hectare or crops. No, so I think that one, and then the other one, other sources of the high inflation is the energy, the increases in transport, in power. I think so. Those two combined accounts for the bulk of the increases in inflation. I think the energy sector, we're seeing prices there, global prices coming down. We have to work hard on the agriculture part, and I think that part of that is this has to do with the timing of imports and the decision to bring in the imports when there are really there are shortages. I think that part of the problem was the information being shared or that was coming out on the availability of local supply, no? And that is true with sugar, and with other some sectors saying there's enough, others are saying there's not much, and the data is so what we are working on now is to and we are suggesting to the president is to have a more robust information system that will allow us to monitor closely supply and demand situation, so that we can recommend to our officials, to the agencies responsible with ordering imports, for example, such that those imports will arrive, will be sufficient to cover the shortfalls, preventing prices from going up, but more importantly, that they come on time, not coming in when farmers are harvesting already or entering the harvest season. Even then, as we enter the harvest season, prices remained high. And it should have been okay to to still bring in the imports, but politically that's not a good decision. And indeed, there is wisdom to bringing in those imports, to get those imports when you are you are entering the lean season. And I think that's what we have to work on. So we have a proposal to the president to have that interagency task force or working group, or that will do a more robust analysis of and recommendation for our actions with respect to supply-demand situations, so that all the stakeholders are represented. The problem with all these calls for or against importation, for example, is that some are noisier than others, and sometimes not the correct information that's properly ventilated. So what we really want to achieve is a more balanced look at the situation, so that the farmers' view are presented there, the consumers' view are presented there, and more importantly, the economy, the impact on the economy of surges in prices are properly ventilated and understood.
Is a lot of this still global, or is it already mostly our fault, Secretary?
I think in recent months, they increasingly have become more domestic. because as you see, in the initial months of the pandemic, it was global. The supply chain disruption, prices of ship, and the cost of shipping shot up exponentially in the early months of the pandemic, particularly during the Ukraine-Russia war. But then, if you see, the shipping costs now have tumbled quite to low levels now, coming down to pre-pandemic levels. No, so I think that part of the inflation has become less important. It's not that. What we really need now to work on is the disruptions at the domestic front.
Yesterday, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, the Senate passed RCEP. And one of the main issues about RCEP is how it could potentially harm our agriculture sector or our farmers. You have assured us and the government that that's not the case. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I think that a proper contextual analysis of the RCEP is that, or of even particularly of our agriculture sector, is that the problems of our agriculture have been there even before RCEP. So whether or not RCEP is there, we have to do something for our agriculture to increase productivity there, because the problem there is really the very low productivity of agriculture, and that has come from various sources. A big part of it is the policy environment in which farmers operate on. The way we have we have designed agrarian reform, that is this issue that has not been resolved, but now there is a move in Congress to finally also resolve that by addressing this titling of land, so that the land markets now can work properly in rural areas, so that those titles can be accepted as collaterals for in the financial market. No? So the land market has collapsed because of, at least in rural areas, partly because of the agrarian reform, and that has to be addressed. A long-term one, it's decades already. But there are many other problems. Access to technology by farmers has been very weak. Again, that's related to the land issue, but it's also related to a poor understanding of the context of farmers. Farming in the country, our country is so diverse geographically, climate, soil, whatever, so that the technology that farmers need for their crops vary quite enormously across the country, and that's partly because of the differences in climate, soil characteristics, and so on, and even including access to markets. So the weakness, a big problem has been that our educational system, our research system, our government has not been able to produce technologies that are quite appropriate for our farmers, that address their constraints and why they are not able to bring their level of productivity. It's sure we have many technologies around there, and that's what I hear very often. Los Baños has so many technologies in the shelf, areas produce, but it's one thing to have the technology, it's another thing to have whether those technologies are appropriate for the farmers' conditions, are profitable, are financially viable, because you don't test them, you don't try those technologies whether they really are attractive, because all we know as students of economic development is that when the technology is profitable, you don't even have to widely advertise it. They will grab it. And get those technologies marketed there. So the fact that you have many technologies, in the shelf of say, state universities and colleges. The question is, why are they not being deployed? And my simple answer as a student of that sector is, they're not profitable. From the point of view of the farmers. So you have to ask, why are the farmers not accept? Because my knowledge of farmers' behavior is that they are as rational as we in Ayala Avenue. Like when the technology, when the opportunity is from their point of view profitable, they will adopt it, especially if they have access to technology to credit. The view that farmers are lazy, farmers don't adopt technologies because they are ignorant, that's not true. That's not borne by evidence whatsoever. Whether it's in the Philippines or in Bangladesh or India or Africa, farmers do seize opportunities when they are there. But those opportunities, unfortunately, are not there.
I think we all knew that there were problems in our agriculture sector, but I think we've all been shocked at how bad it's become. I do have one more question, but I do want to turn to the audience about agriculture questions. First one, sorry, Jaime?
Thank you, Secretary, for being here with us today. It's not about agriculture, is that all right? Secretary, I know that you've always been a good friend of private sector capital entering the economy and addressing pain points. There's a massive new shift with respect to the Marcos administration and yourself in revitalizing PPPs and the private sector engagement, whereas the last administration was looking more at, I guess, overseas development funding and the like. How do you see that evolving? I think the PPP Center is under NEDA now. It might be interesting for this community to hear where you think the areas of focus might be and which areas you would like to promote in particular. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you. Yeah. So the proper let's start with the context. I think that tapping the private capital is the way to go. Partly because, or largely because, government has no money. We have very limited resources. The fiscal space is very narrow because a lot of the policy, the responses to the pandemic have raised the level of death high. And while some say that we have enough space, personally I don't think so. Unfortunately, we're a country which does not have a good history of sustained economic development, and that must be acknowledged. We are not Vietnam, we are not Thailand, we are not even Indonesia, for that matter. So we have a much fragile, I must say, up and that boom bust cycle of growth that the investment community there will not look at nicely. So the only way we can sustain massive infrastructure development for both physically and socially is to get the private sector, which I am aware it's awash with capital. But we also have to bring in, particularly, or make the country attractive to foreign investment. Our sense is that the only way you can create quality jobs, high quality jobs, better jobs, is to increase investment. Without that investment, of course you can create jobs, but those are not jobs that will deliver the poor out of poverty, or that will able for families to send their kids to school. Because the way we compute employment, as we report in the PSAs, 1 hour employment in a day, you are already employed. If you are peddling cigarette in the street, you're already employed. That's not the kind of jobs that we want. We want those jobs that are secured in the manufacturing sector, high quality, sustained, whether it rains or shines, the jobs there. And that's the kind of, and realistically, the only way you can get that productivity rising is a massive infusion of capital. So that any demands for increase in wages, for example, are met by increases in productivity. Because if wages are or rise because simply inflation is is high without increase in productivity, then we screw up the rest of the economy.
In terms of, in your phrase, massive infusion of capital, for example, into infrastructure, that means PPPs. I know you just announced the first one. I think it's PGH.
Yeah, that's, yeah, sorry. Yeah, that means that I have that answered.
Go ahead.
Am I right about this question and what the way forward for the PPP? Yes, we are trying to apart from what we have already done and improving the IRR so that it meets both goals of making it attractive for farmers, for our private sector, but it's also meets the interest of the public sector. But we need to do much more than that. We are pushing for the amendment of the Build, Operate, Transfer. It's number one in the legislative agenda of both the executive and the legislative. We have met a few days ago to again revisit that list, and we still want that amendment of the BOT law the top, and I think that we should be able to have that by June before Congress have this recess. So that's one that we are pushing. In the meantime, because that will improve the governance of PPP, removing the obstacles, the challenges in doing PPP, clarifying the rules of the game, so that everyone is seeing the same.
So you've announced the first one. It's a PGH project. And I know that, as you said, it's a priority to amend the BOT law. I guess that my question is, will we see a rapid increase of PPP projects being offered, or are we going to wait until the BOT law is amended?
No, I think we are moving quickly to get these projects that we offer. This week, the NEDA Board Infrastructure Committee is meeting. That's the cabinet level to finalize the list that we will recommend to the President, to the NEDA Board, which will meet on March 9 to approve that list. And that list is quite a big number of projects. Tentatively or indicatively, it's talking about 3,700 projects worth 15 trillion pesos in the medium term.
This is infra, not just PPP.
That's the whole universe. And out of that, you have the PPP. We have about 190 that are now have been going, and roughly something like 90 are in the indicative. If I may look at my código, about 90 of those are in the indicative.
So your guess, Secretary, on March 9, you will announce 5 or 10 or 15?
No, we'll on March 9, hopefully that that the president, that the cabinet, the president will approve that. It's bearing the entire list, so that and we have already identified what are likely PPP, but we are open to accommodating any of those or as candidates for PPP. The number of PPP in the pipeline at the moment, and because this is an ongoing exercise, it's about 98, worth about 3 trillion pesos. And again, as I said, as we unveil we are trying to also come out of this 3,700 that I just mentioned. We're trying to call what we may call the flagship infrastructure projects for the BBM, Build Better More program of the government. And hopefully I can't say anything more about, just saying that, yeah, we are working on that, but
These PPP projects that you're talking about, were they already ready when you came in, or did you assemble them since June of last year? In other words, the Duterte government was not very pro PPP. Did they have some homework left over when you came in?
There's some that have been prepared. Some were returned the last during the last few months of the administration. Were returned to the proponents, and so we are examining those were returned, and if they were ready to go and they satisfy the standards that we are setting in, then they should be allowed, they should be entertained.
Secretary, we've talked to you a couple of times last year. You were the first, Secretary was the first cabinet secretary that we met in June 4, I think. You were still in your old office. The president hadn't taken his oath, and we brought up the same topic that I think we brought up in December, just before Christmas when we met with you again. And one is really the payment for projects, whether it's a PPP, actually more for the non-PPP projects, and also the release of ODA funds. I know we talked about this with you, and I don't know if you remember the conversation. Have you been able to make some headway in terms of resolving payment issues?
You mean those that are alive cases?
Yes, they're already, the construction has happened, the payment hasn't happened.
Yeah, it's quite embarrassing to hear that.
I'm sorry to bring up that embarrassing point.
Yeah, I know, but I had that embarrassment when I visited JICA, and because we were asking for more, I was asking for assistance and developing, the infrastructure roadmap for the entire country, so that we have a clear idea of how the infrastructure will look like, so that people will not be lobbying and should put the roads there, or the roads there. In fact, what you need is that. So I wanted a more robust infrastructure roadmap for the entire country, and that could serve as the basis for our infrastructure. But the JICA, what the JICA told me is, well, you have some unsettled payments, and apparently these are payments for previous contractors, and that been and that was raised also again during the visit of the president in Tokyo, and we have provided an answer to that. We have to put a closure to these issues, and so our finance secretary has worked on that. I know that they have been working on that, and there have been some positive developments toward resolving those issues, because we need to honor contracts, and that this is the most important signal that you can give to the global community, that their investments in this country are safe, that we don't change rules in the middle of the game.
Thanks, Secretary. We have a question over there. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and then ask a brief question?
Okay. Good afternoon, Secretary Coco. I'm Vanessa from the Australian Embassy. I'm just curious to know, in terms of, since we're talking about investment, what will the newly created Presidential Advisory on Investment and Economic Affairs will do differently in terms of attracting foreign investments? And of course, for those who are already here, how can they assist, and how government departments like yourself, NEDA, will work with them? So we're just sorry to put you on the spot.
No, of course, I did try to clarify that. We talked, Frederick Go and myself, and I talked about our mutual understanding of what our respective it's clear to me what that office will do, and it's essentially to follow up, serve as kind of what do you call this? Tony Blair's what's his term for that? Essentially, it's following up all these pledges. We have been receiving so many pledges, right? But somebody has to be monitoring doing the pushing, and following up, and that I was made to understand is the nature of that office. So it works completely well. It will very much complement the work that we do both sa NEDA at saka DTI, because there's also that issue.
Hindi kayo magbabanggaan yan.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. Yeah.
I mean, you have DECGOS department, you have PSAC, you have DTI, you have NEDA, DF.
We have been, the Office of the President has been calling us to join meetings. PSAC, and we don't have a monopoly of of ideas and solutions to the economy's problems. So we'd like to hear what those ideas are, and if it's something that we can work on with them to get things faster. I think that should be welcome.
Thanks
That's
very
my
much.
attitude, at least. I mean,
Coco, before,
We hope they have the same attitude. Yes. Who called me? Here. Yes, Mr. Punubayan.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to congratulate you, Secretary.
For those who don't know, this is Mr. Ben Punungbayan.
Ben Punungbayan. Well, I was saying congratulations for a great job that you have done at the Philippine Competition Commission. Actually, I was hesitating to really stand up and ask a question because of the shortage of time, I may not be understood. I'm one of the oldest citizens in this gathering, and I've seen alive presidents from President Rojas. And so you can see, I've been there for a long time, and sad to say I've seen this country to be really lagged behind. And I've tried to just demonstrate these things, but what I have in mind anyway, by some kind of illustrations like we are only ahead of Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. And when you talk about prices, the cost of food in Thailand, Malaysia, and even Indonesia are lower than the Philippines and all that. From my point of view, over this length of time, I think what we lack in this country is a honest to goodness coordination of things that we do, and really a serious kind of long-term focus. And I would think that NEDA will be that kind of place where these things will emanate. For example, this country is composed of so many islands, and many people really say that we need connectivity. Well, we always say, let's connect. But I have not seen any very concrete, clear plans how to connect the islands from A island to B island by water, by air, or even telecommunications. We are just living it by chance. That's what I would like to imply. And we need to leapfrog because we are behind already. And if we don't really do something a little bit different from here on, I would like to think that, well, anyway, it will not be a really good kind of scenario for our children and grandchildren and all that. And
Mr. Punubayan, go ahead.
I would like to see some kind of specific things that we need to do, like the connectivity and all that. We are trying to sell so many cars, but I don't think we can sell 1 million cars if we don't, do this all connectivity. If you look at the map of the Philippines, the typhoons that come from the southeast going northwest, so that the center of activities now are located in that kind of path. So we have a lot of disruptions and I guess loss of productivity. And there is that kind of thing that, on the western side you have Bataan and Zambales and the Panay Island and all that. Don't you think we should really be shifting some of these activities to those areas so that, you can really expand these things and all that. That's all. As I said, I may have difficulty trying to express myself, but
No,
we need to leapfrog.
it's a very good point,
Thank you.
Mr. Punumbayan. I think this might link, Secretary, to the whole transformation theme of the PDP. That's the theme of the next Philippine Development Plan. How is it different from the previous plans? And you've been involved in previous plans as well.
I think it's in many ways. The context for the current PDP is quite different from previous context. First, it's coming at the time when the economy is recovering from this pandemic, which brought the economy to its sharpest contraction in post-war era. In 2020, our economy, as you know, contracted by nearly 10%. That was quite sharp. We haven't even recovered that now, as of today, at least in per capita terms. So that's that one, and there are obviously constraints that are come out as a result of that. Second is the climate change is something that that can no longer be just dismissed. That many of these previous plans, climate change was not really given that much attention. They were mentioned there, but there are no concrete plans and program strategies on how to mainstream that issue into our development. The third is technologies have changed so rapidly in the last decade, particularly digitalization. And so this whole business of ramping up the country's adoption and use of and even developing our digital economy is there. So it's a big part of the entire plan is all about pushing for digitalization, starting with government, where you have a lot of those inefficiencies that can be addressed partly by digitalization. The other element there is there's a big push for PPP in the entire program. Again, it's by need. And also it's not just to fill up capital, missing lack of capital, as I mentioned earlier, but from experiences, the private sector can bring in dynamism in the economy by way of technology, processes, ways of doing business. So if you can get those private sector technologies, processes into the public domain, you can get a more dynamic public-private interaction.
We have time for one or two more questions. There's one, I think, from Zoom.
Yeah.
Adrian?
This is a question from our board member, Dr. Alep. With reference to financial inclusion, what is the policy position of the Marcos government regarding microfinance and microinsurance? What are the incentives of the government to help MFIs and MBAs so that they can expand their support to the farmers and the rural poor?
Our trust is really not so much of incentives, but it's really improving the ecosystem for financial inclusion, all these regulatory issues that you talked about. Our concern, just to be clear, is that, as I said, our fiscal space is very limited, and you can't afford to squander those limited resources to incentives that, particularly if those are intended for already profitable sectors. Of course, micro enterprises may not, but as we understood it, as we understood the literature, and it's many surveys and reports coming from the business community, the most binding constraint to investment and growth are, one, the ease of doing business, regulatory measures. to infrastructure, both physical and so forth, the lack of it or the insufficiency of it. 3, it's the governance, and that includes policy, credibility, stability, and so on. You know, and I see, if I look at a list, you know, I don't see where that you know, fiscal incentives are paramount. Of course, there are areas, and this is where the PDP also comes in. It's not really close to industrial policy because we do want to target and develop sectors that are very promising. For example, tourism, our agriculture that has to be revived, and certain sectors like the medical, health, social sectors. Those may need more assistance, and that's where we would want to focus those very limited resources so that we can get the economy growing as we make that growth inclusive. I think those are the two key points there. You make the economy grow, but making also sure that the economy, that growth is inclusive. It benefits everyone. And here, social inclusion, the social sector, the health in particular, the education in particular, the social protection like insurance in particular, those have to be properly attended to. And that's where we would want our limited resources to be put in, because otherwise, if you use that for something else that are otherwise already viable, then you can have growth, but that growth is not going to be inclusive, and therefore it's not going to be sustainable. And we have that kind of experience, over the last 5 decades.
Thank you. We have room for one last brief question.
Hello, good morning, Secretary. I'm Katrina Tordilla from the ASCOT Limited. So my question relates more to tourism. With the government's priority geared towards improving tourism in the Philippines, is there talk of allowing or loosening up foreign ownership restrictions in relation to developments or new inventory for the tourism industry, especially like developing hotels, casinos, and all of that relations?
Opening up the economy to foreign equity and even practice of profession has been my long-term advocacy for me, because we have learned our lessons. And so, I would like whether it's in tourism or in other areas of the economy, I would like us to remove these obstacles to entry of capital. Of course, you can have some concerns like security issues, but you can address those with using other tools of government, not trade policy or investment policy. Now, we do recognize, and it's very high in the focus of the PDP, that tourism has much potential in the economy, and we would like that to be another driver to the growth of the economy. As of now, you're talking about 10 to 12% of GDP contributed by tourism, but we do believe that can double if we can, get our acts together. I think that I have so much respect and admiration for the work of our current secretary. He does seem to know what the priorities are, and we support her for that.
Thanks very much. I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking Secretary Balisacan for joining us this morning. I will ask a final question, but before that, could I ask all of you, if you're so kind, to offer us some feedback. There's a QR code on your table and here, and while you fill that up, I will ask the final question of Secretary Balisacan. Could you give Secretary Balisacan a clue about the question that I'm going to ask? That's the clue, Secretary. Do you know what it is? Okay. So Secretary has been, we introduced a Secretary as a marathoner and a very fast runner. Our board members know that one of our board members says he beats her all the time when they run. So with that as a background, Secretary, why is your pride and joy this collection of figurines of turtles?
Yes, that's my passion for diversity, and but also, you know, that reflects very much my character. We're, you know, slow but patient, you know, patient, and you'll know that when you're patient enough, perseverance, you'll get there.
When we met the Secretary back in June, he greeted us, I think, within the first minute or so. And remember, the background is he had been NEDA Secretary before, is something to the effect of, I've been there before, I know better now. I think we're seeing the results of that with the very fast actions we've seen in the first 6 months. We're looking forward to more of that in the next 6 months. We have a gift for the Secretary by my colleague Bianca. We'll bring it up here. Thank you very much. Bianca, does the gift have a name?
Yeah, I think it's Sylvie, the silver turtle.
Is there contribution to Secretary's collection?
Oh, it's big.
There you go. Thanks, Bianca. Secretary, please stay. Everybody, we're going to take a couple of photos, but if you can stay for lunch, please stay for lunch. Secretary, please stay. Could I ask our board members to join the Secretary for a photo? Bianca, who do you want to sit down? Secretary, could you sit and could the others go behind? Secretary and Mr. Chu, sit down.
May we also invite our sponsors from ACCIONA, Ruben Cava, SMIC's Ian Aguirre, and SteelAsia's Vicky.
Thank you for attending MBC's F2F with CABSEX. Transformation, finally our third, with NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan. Stay up to date on MBC events, activities, and advocacies by following us on our social media. We invite you to join in our upcoming events on March 13, the third session of F2F with CABSEX series featuring Department of Energy Secretary Rafael Lotilla. On March 16, third session of the Online Circular Economy Forum. And on April 27, fourth session of F2F with CABSEX series featuring Department of Transportation Secretary Bautista. Good day to all, and we look forward to seeing you again in our future events. Thank you and stay safe.